to turn my soul into a raging fire. Come on, to turn my soul into a raging fire. Come on, till we lose control into a raging fire.
He scores! Alec Martinez gets the goal. The Los Angeles Kings have won the Stanley Cup.
Welcome to the latest edition of First Take UK podcast. This is another of our NHL previews, and I'm delighted to be joined by NHL.com writer Matt Sitkoff. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. We're getting started here with the big season, and looking forward to it. We had a great year last year, a lot of outdoor games, a lot of intrigue in the playoffs, and the Stanley Cup champion is the Kings, so it should be another good year coming up.
Yeah, it was a very interesting season last year that culminated in arguably one of the best playoffs, certainly of my lifetime that I can remember. Lots of excitement, lots of overtime games in the Stanley Cup finals and throughout the playoffs. And if this season is anything like that, I think we're in for something a bit special.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think coming off the excitement of the outdoor games and even the Olympics last year with Canada coming on top in the gold medal game, and then you go to the playoff races and the new playoff format, and it seemed to kind of all go into the favor of a really good run and a lot of divisional opponents facing each other in the playoffs. I mean, how many times are you going to get a Flyers Rangers and a Canadian Bruins and a Sharks Kings and a Blues Blackhawks playoff series all in the same year? And then you saw all the different comebacks, and the Sharks Kings one actually was obviously one of the best in history, and then followed the Kings up again with one against the rival Anaheim Ducks, and it was really exciting playoffs, and obviously the Rangers made a great run in the East and put up a good fight with all the overtimes in the Stanley Cup, and it really is one of those years that you're going to have to kind of remember and say, I was there when this happened, I was there when this happened, and it really does bring a lot of excitement for this year because with everyone kind of with the big moves that have been made and everyone kind of being in the same division, the division matchups will be as intense as they were last year, and I think it will kind of follow up with a great year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think last year's day was tremendous, and this year will definitely follow that. I just want to touch on something you just mentioned about the outdoor games. I mean, this is something that's come more and more into the NHL as we've over the last few years. What do you make of these, and are you a big fan of those?
I'm a huge fan of these. I think it really does bring you back to your roots, and I know when I was growing up, I was out there playing outdoor hockey and really enjoying the nature of playing outdoors. And every player I talked to has said similar experiences that I've had, and it really does bring a great atmosphere of back in the childhood days. And this year we saw some really great scenery with it. You go back to the Winter Classic at Detroit and the 100,000+ fans and the snow falling and a shootout and a great shootout. And then, Chicago, you had, again, you had a lot of snow and a great game between Pittsburgh and Chicago. And then the Yankee Stadium one. And then, I mean, who cannot forget the images of the beach volleyball in center field at Dodger Stadium as the Kings and Ducks faced off at famous Dodger Stadium, and put a great game out there for everyone. And I think it is definitely something that people look forward to this year in Nationals Park with the Capitals and Blackhawks will be something everyone looks forward to, and then definitely with the Sharks and Kings in Levi Stadium is going to be another one of those picturesque days that you're going to look out and say, wow, that looks so cool. And I think they are definitely here to stay and very, very enjoyable to watch, that's for sure.
No, without a doubt. It's something that I look forward to seeing, even from afar, even on the TV. So yeah, I'm a big fan of these. I think they're fun games to watch and just something a little bit different to the NHL that some of the other sports maybe can't touch into. So definitely here to stay, and long may they continue. But
Oh yeah, definitely here to stay. That's for sure. And I think as all fans will attest to it, they look forward to them. That's for sure.
without a doubt. So we're almost on to another NHL season. So last year is now very much in the rear view window, and now we've got to try and get prepared for this season. So today we're going to sit and talk here about the Central Division. In the overall Central Division itself, how do you think it compares in terms of competitiveness compared to some of the other divisions in hockey right now?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, we saw last year with definitely the improved play of the Colorado Avalanche under Patrick Waugh and Nathan McKinnon, and finally a healthy Matt Duchene. We kind of now brought the Central Division up to pretty much up to the top of the division standings. I mean, obviously we know what the Pacific Division brings. We know that we have a two-time Stanley Cup champion in the LA Kings for 3 years. We have Anaheim Ducks, who obviously was the number one team in the West. But I think what makes the Central Division a little bit more stronger than the Pacific is you look down near the bottom of the Central Division, and I didn't even mention the Chicago Blackhawks yet. And that team is a team that also has won 2 Stanley Cups in the last 5 years. So you look at the bottom of the division Central, and that's where I think it becomes a little bit more strong. You look at the Dallas Stars and what they've been able to do under Jim Neal, being 1 year removed from getting Tyler Seguin and his awesome run last year, and then this year they go out and get Jason Spezza to match up to the some of the top 2 centers in the league. And then you go to the Minnesota Wild, and I mean, we cannot sleep on the Minnesota Wild. This team is, we know a couple of years ago they made the big moves to get Suter and Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, and those moves are starting to pay off. And then not only what do they do this year, they go out and get Thomas Vanek, another superstar, to play along Jason Pominville, who they got from Buffalo as well, who's another, one of these pure goal scorers, 30 goal scorer last year. And then you can't sleep on Nashville. I mean, Nashville is one of those teams that you look at their division record and you kind of understand why they struggled so much last year. And we also cannot forget that they didn't have their starting goalie for most of the year last year. And Pekka Rinne, who has been a Vezina finalist, the last couple of years. And we know their defense is going to be always strong. And then you add a coach like Peter Laviolette, such an offensive-driven coach, to such a great defensive team. It really is, they're going to be a tough team to play against, and maybe not a playoff team this year, but you look at that being more of a tougher division. And even the last place team, which will probably finish the last place, is Winnipeg Jets, and under Paul Maurice, they really have kind of taken a step forward. So, to answer your question, I think right now the Central Division is the best division in hockey from top to bottom. I think obviously the Pacific Division, the top 3 are probably one of the 3 of the top 8 teams, obviously in the Western Conference in the Pacific Division. But I think top to bottom, you look at the Central Division, and it is the toughest division to win. And I don't even see any of the Atlantic or the Metropolitan Division in the East even coming close to the toughness of the Central Division.
No, without a doubt. I mean, I think this is an incredibly tough division that's just been made more tough by it seems that teams are on the rise in this particular division. So let's start taking a look at some of these teams in a bit more depth. And we'll start at the very top with the team that actually won the division last year. And my team, and I was probably more shocked than anyone that they actually managed to win this division, that's the Colorado Avalanche. And I suppose the first thing to look at is, can they repeat last year's success? And will the overachieving from last season catch up with them this season?
Yeah, I think for me, I think you have to redefine success when it comes to the Colorado Avalanche, because I think they did overachieve last year. They got a career year out of Semyon Varlamov, and they've got a lot of great productions all throughout their lineup, and even Tyson Barrie, as you look at him and what he brought in. We all know that they were kind of missing that number 1 defenseman, and really Tyson Barrie at the end of last year. became that, and we saw it in the playoffs against Minnesota. Once he got hurt, the series changed, and under great leadership, Patrick Waugh, Joe Sakic, look at Gabriel Landeskog, their young captain. Paul Stastny is gone, so I think that definitely kind of pulls a little bit away from their leadership. But they did go out and get a guy like Danny Briere, who definitely is one of those guys that you want in clutch situations, and a great teammate and a great person to have on your team. I think for me, the key is Semyon Varlamov. I think, the 41 wins last year, the franchise record, passing Waugh himself on the franchise record for wins in the season. Is this really Semyon Varlamov we're going to see? Are we finally seeing this guy that we all knew had the skills when he was drafted in Washington and took over those reins in Washington, was traded for 2 first-round picks for Colorado Avalanche to be their franchise goalie? Under Waugh and Allaire, is this really who we're going to see with him? Because we know he faced a lot of shots last year. We know he was a big reason why they won a lot of the games last year. And then the second thing is Nathan MacKinnon. With Paul Stastny's departure, Nathan MacKinnon now goes back to his natural position of center, centering a line, most likely with Landeskog. And, those guys had great chemistry in the playoffs last year with Paul Stastny. And, for me, I think those two factors will make this season a success for them. Will they win the Central Division? Probably not. And that's where I'm saying you're going to have to temper your expectations with this team. Will they make the playoffs? Yes. Will they have a successful season? Yes. Will Nathan MacKinnon build on a success? Yes. Will Semyon Varlamov be the real deal? Yes. So for me, I look at the Colorado Avalanche as probably finishing maybe second or third in this division, but that's not a bad place to be in this tough division.
No, I mean, I've got them down at third. Even with my fandom on hold for a minute, I can't see them repeating as divisional winners. I mean, my concerns are around whether or not Varlamov can repeat from last season. The defence for Colorado does worry me a little bit, because if they continue to give up that many shots, if Varlamov isn't quite on his game, then the losses will start coming. And I think, they're going to be competitive most nights. I think they're one of the most exciting teams to watch over in the Western Conference. And I think they possibly got a better balance as well. Would you agree, by picking up Iginla and maybe letting Stastny go?
Yes, I think for sure. I think Jerome Iginla making the commitment to him on a long-term deal, longer deal than Boston did with a 1-year deal, was definitely going to help their balance. I think for sure. I think you look at what P.A. Parento kind of brought to the team was not much. You get rid of him, you slide in easily could slide in Iginla in that top 6 that includes Duchesne, Landeskog, O'Reilly, and MacKinnon. And I definitely love the balance that he brings. And let's not forget Alex Tanguay, too. I mean, that is definitely one guy who kind of was the forgotten player last year because of his injury concerns. But you slot him back in the top 6, and you definitely have a lot more balance when you factor in, you go from, Tanguay and Iginla in the top 6, getting rid of Stastny. And sky's the limit for Nathan MacKinnon, and putting him in a center position in a more open position for a guy that's talented will definitely improve his statistics this year.
No, completely agree. So we both got Colorado making the playoffs, maybe somewhere around about that second or third spot. So let's move on to St. Louis, a team that finished second in the division last year, and things really went wrong for them. They went out and got the guy they thought would be the final piece of the puzzle to try and win them that cup in Ryan Miller. What went wrong for them?
Yeah, it was a very weird ending for that team, because you would think once Brent Seabrook, knocked out Backus and got the suspension, that it kind of it was kind of switched in their favor against the Chicago Blackhawks, and then the offense stopped showing up. Then Ryan Miller started letting in bad goals and really kind of struggled to finish the year. And it really, at the end of the year, too, is what cost them. They really dried up offensively, and Ryan Miller struggled. And what difference would have been made for them to play, in being Colorado and play switch spots with Colorado and play Minnesota in the first round instead of the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe they're the team we're talking about making the Western Conference Final, maybe even making a Stanley Cup Final, depending on how they would have faced against the Kings. I think for me it really kind of boils down to their offense ability. We look at them and we say they're definitely a team that is built on scoring by committee, scoring by depth, and then it really kind of is when you're when you don't have that go-to guy to be your leading scorer, even though Alexander Steen was definitely one of the top scorers last year. It's really going to be hard, when it comes down to the tough of it all, to really know who's going to step up in that position. Is it going to be those Tarasenko's or Schwartz, the younger guys? And that's where it goes back to the Colorado guy, getting a guy like Paul Stasny, bringing him home and getting him at a good contract, will really help this team, because I think they were definitely lacking that go-to number one guy that you can kind of count on. And Paul Stasny, at this point of his career, maybe is not the same scorer he was, but he sure is a guy that people look at and say, all right, we can kind of play well with him, and then it kind of slides everyone back into their positions. Can David Backes be good as a number two center? And then you look at the third line, if it's going to be Laterra and Schwartz and Tarasenko, then they slide into their position. So I think for me, it definitely getting a guy like Paul Stasny kind of evens out what they're looking for, and especially, like I said, in the Western Conference, you need those top two centers that can really match up against the Kopitars, the Getzlaffs, and I think they did the right move in getting Stasny.
Do you think you talk about not having that top guy that you can rely on? Do you think that is more of a key really come the playoffs, whereas in the regular season the scoring can be distributed around a few players, but when you get in the playoffs and where the chances are a lot fewer, far between, that you really need that number one guy that can get you those goals in those key moments? I mean, we've seen it with the Blackhawks in times past with their big T getting them key goals, and it tends to be in the playoffs where those guys step up. So is that really the big hole that St. Louis had to fill?
Yeah, and definitely I think for me, it's if you look at the teams that have been successful, the Blackhawks, obviously Kane and Taves spreading out their wealth, the Ducks with Getzlaff and Perry, in the East you look at the, Pittsburgh Penguins, obviously with Malcolm Crosby, who haven't had playoff success, so they're probably not the best example. It definitely opens up a lot more spaces for your bottom, for your secondary scoring, if you have that guy to kind of open up, having to face the other team's top center or having to face the other team's second line, which then opens up your thing. And you look at the Blues and their scoring depth is some of the best in the league. You look at Steen, Oshie, Backes, Schwartz, Tarasenko, Berglund even, and you add Stasny to that matchup. I will never say the St. Louis Blues are not a deep scoring team, but I do think in the playoffs you definitely need that guy that you can look towards and also be able to take the other team's top players out of the game. And that's something like Paul Stasny is you look at his career playoff numbers, they're really good, and they're really good for a reason. He really could be that guy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's a wonderful pickup for them, and we touched on the net mining situation earlier on with obviously Ryan Miller coming over, and he's now no longer there. Are you confident in Brian Elliott potentially being the number one guy in St. Louis this season?
I'm not 100% confident. I think for me, it obviously was a move out of, take one step back to take two steps forward. You look at what Jake Allen has done, pretty much in the, in the minor leagues, and obviously when he was years ago with all the injuries to Hallock and Elliott, he was forced into action, and was really kind of a great stepping point for them. But for me, I think it's really it's hard to judge Brian Elliott. I think he's a really good regular season goalie. We've seen the numbers, the Jennings Trophy a couple of years back with Hallock, but we've seen him in the playoffs. Against unfortunately it's both been against the LA Kings. kind of fall out flat. And I think that's where, for me, it's going to be interesting. I think Elliott is going to have a good regular season. I think Jake Allen, you're going to see maybe Elliott start 60% of the games and Jake Allen start maybe 40% of the games. Elliott will be the number one guy. But then in the playoffs, I think it will be very interesting to see what Ken Hitchcock does, because we know what Brian Elliott can do in the playoffs. We don't know what Jake Allen can do in the playoffs. So, looking all the way down into April, it'll be interesting to see what we say as who's going to be their starting goaltender in the playoffs. But as a regular season goalie, and that's where I'm kind of 50-50 on Elliott, I think Brian Elliott will be fine. I think you look at his career numbers, he's definitely, when asked upon to be a starting goalie, he's done well when he's asked upon to step in and play a lot of games in a row. He's done it. And let's not forget the Blues defense is one of the top in the league. And you add a guy like Carl Gunnarsson to that great defensive core. And Jordan Leopold, who was hurt last year, it's pretty easy to be a St. Louis Blues goalie, and that's what really was shocking about Ryan Miller last year, is, as we saw, is when his not facing as many shots and not facing as many real good scoring opportunities, it was really disappointing to see him fall flat in the playoffs, because we know the strength of the St. Louis Blues is their gritty two-way play and their smart defensemen that make really good plays.
No, without a doubt. And I've got St. Louis finishing second in this particular division. I've got them just pipping Colorado for that second place. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think for me, that second place where they finished, is definitely kind of where I kind of had them slotted, same as they finished last year. I think it will be definitely tooth or nail with Colorado, similar to Chicago last year. But I definitely have them second place. I just, the next team I'm sure we'll talk about is just too good for them to pass right now.
Yeah, moving on to last season's third place team in this division, it can only be the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, this team we know what this team's about. They're just built for a playoff run every single year, and they put together the big extensions of their big two over the off season. What did you make of those contracts that were handed out to those guys?
I think for me it was I saw it coming, but I definitely it's definitely going to take some maneuvering for the Chicago Blackhawks to get back under the cap. I think if any two players that were deserving of those contracts, it's Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. I mean, they have single-handedly put Chicago back on the map. They've had nothing but success other than obviously the LA Kings. Look at the Blackhawks and the Kings, and those two teams are the top two teams in the NHL. And I think for the Chicago Blackhawks, they know where their bread and butter is made, and it's with those two players. So I think that's where it was almost expected. But I think for me in the long haul, it will definitely be interesting to see how they work their salary cap, especially when you talk about defense. You look at Johnny Oduya, you look at Nick Leddy, you look at those kind of contracts. Will they have to sacrifice some of those to fit these guys back on their cap? And that's where I worry a little bit about those contracts that were given out. That's not to say that they don't have some good young defensive prospects that can come in or make other trades to fill in that defense. Stan Bowman has definitely done an amazing job of that. But for me, I would definitely say you're going to have to give out those kind of contracts. It's those two players that deserve it.
No, without a doubt. It's very difficult to make a case against it. You've got the guys that have been the cornerstone of your franchise. They've won you 2 Stanley Cups in recent memory. As you rightly say, if there are guys out there that deserve these contracts, then Toews and Kane are guys that should actually get this money. And I haven't got a problem with it, but I'm the same as you. I do worry about maybe some of their salary cap flexibility going forward. And you're talking about those two guys. I mean, the actual top 6 that they put out there on their first 2 lines, is this not one of the best, if not the best top 6 in the NHL right now?
Yeah, I think for me it's the best top 6 in the NHL, especially when all healthy. I think obviously the one downfall, and we've all seen it, is Brad Richards at the second line center. I think that obviously is their number 6 player. But for me, I think, we kind of can't forget what kind of a good, solid player Brad Richards can be. And then even look even deeper, and you look at, a guy like David Teravainen, who could steal that number 2 line when Brad Richards falters, or even sliding in and Andrew Shaw, who played a little second line center last year. I mean, it's just whoever you put in there, you can't argue with it. With definitely Patrick Sharp, Marian Hossa, Brandon Saad, who's starting to become a real force in this league. It's very hard not to look at their top 6. I'd say maybe Pittsburgh is the only one that could possibly rival it, especially with the Malkins and the Crosbys and the Kunitzes of the world, especially now and also with a healthy Pascal Dupuis. LA Kings is not a bad top 6 themselves, and especially, with them and their success that they've had. And it's hard to tell who is the second line versus the third line, the way Justin Williams plays. But, I think for me, you're right, it's got to be Chicago as the best top 6. And especially if Teuvo Teravainen is slotted in there and you put him in that top 6, I think it's by far the best top 6.
No, without a doubt. It's a scary proposition on any night when them 2 lines hit the ice. It's going to cause wholesale problems for teams not only in this division but across the NHL as a whole. And this team, as we say, is built to make a playoff run and potentially win another Stanley Cup. But is there any concerns out there that could potentially cause them an issue or 2 along the way to trying to make that run?
I think for me, it's on the defense. I think, if they do have to move a Nick Leddy or Johnny Aduya, they really haven't done a great job of giving their AHL players some time. And you know what? I understand why, because you look at Keith, Seabrook, Aduya, Hjalmarsson, Leddy, and Roosevelt, and they've pretty much, other than Roosevelt, have been pretty healthy throughout their last couple years. But, for me, it's like, if they do have a defensive injury, is a David Rundblad really a solution? If they traded Nick Leddy, is a David Rundblad really a solution? I like Adam Clendening. That's one guy that I could see maybe sneaking into that defensive core and making me feel a little bit better about it. Stephen Johns, he could be NHL ready. We'll really see. I think for me, that's probably the only place I have. I mean, obviously Keith and Seabrook are top of the class as Keith, won another Norris Trophy. But, if we're talking about, do they have to lose some defensive depth, and say they do lose Aduya and say they do lose Nick Leddy, then you're looking for 2 open spots. And I don't know if Rundblad and Clendening are quite ready to fill those spots at this point of their careers.
No, this is it. It's going to be an interesting season for Chicago, but I think we can go out on a limb really here and Matt, and say that this team will win the division.
Yeah, I think this team will win the division. I think it's just they're too balanced up front. I think we saw a little bit of when Crawford got injured, we saw them go down a little bit. Antti Raanta tried to keep them up. We saw, Kane get injured at the end of the year, which kind of helped them, hurt them in the short run, but helped them in the long run as he was ready for the playoff race. But I think for sure this team is the team to beat in the Central Division. I think, St. Louis is going to be very close. I think St. Louis will probably be a little bit more, competitive towards that top of the division, as they pretty much had it all last year up to the end. But for me, I think it goes Chicago, St. Louis, Colorado as the top 3 teams.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. And we'll now move along to the team that finished 4th in the division last year and beat Colorado in the first round of the NHL playoffs last year in the Minnesota Wild. Were you surprised with the Minnesota Wild being able to get through that first round of the playoffs last season?
Well, I think for the Minnesota Wild, it was a very interesting year as they pretty much had to go through. I think you suited up one game for them, right, in goalie. I think I was in the net for one of those games too. I mean, it was very interesting going from the great story of Josh Harding to Nicholas Backstrom to Darcy Kemper to Ilya Bryzgalov to John Curry to whoever else wanted to play goalie for that team. So I think for me it was a little shocking. I think maybe it was Colorado not ready to take the next step, and Minnesota ready to take the next step, because let's not forget Minnesota, made the playoffs the year before and had a similar situation where, they weren't ready for it, and they were taken out real quickly by the Chicago Blackhawks. We can't underestimate what Zach Parise and Ryan Suter mean to this team. We can't underestimate, the great play of Jason Pomerville, and how about Nino Ryder and Charlie Coyle and some of these other guys that really kind of stepped up their game last year for this team. Nino Ryder having the game-winning overtime goal in Game 7. I think for me, Minnesota has taken that, next step. Minnesota and Dallas are two teams that it's very hard for me, it's very easy for me to see them winning the division or finishing second or third in the division, but it's very hard for me to see them going over the big three yet. Maybe Colorado could fall down to that 4th spot if Minnesota takes the next step. But it all starts and begins and ends with their goaltending. Josh Harding's injured again, suspended. Kemper now is on a one-way deal. Briscoe is back in camp. Backstrom says he's the healthiest he's ever felt, but he said that for the last 3 years. I think, goaltending is going to be the biggest issue for this team, and that's where it's always it's harder to kind of see them going over teams like the Blackhawks, who have Crawford, who's won a Stanley Cup, St. Louis Blues, who's Elliott, who has proven he's a good starting goalie, and Colorado, Simeon Varlamov, who was a Vezina finalist last year.
Does that mean we have to get our goalie pads ready again then, Matt?
Get our what?
Does that mean we have to get our goalie pads ready again?
Oh, yes, we do. We have to get our goalie pads ready, because it's already beginning, and it's going to be interesting. You see the rumors of Marty Brodeur being floated around, but I think for me it's Darcy Kemper's job to lose. I think they've made the commitment, the 2-year one-way deal for him. The future is now for Darcy Kemper. He's done it in the past. It's just, can he stay healthy?
No, without a doubt. I mean, I think for me, looking back at the last year's playoffs, I think Minnesota probably out-physicaled the Colorado team, and I think that was one of the big deciding factors for me. Maybe Colorado weren't big enough, I felt, going into that series, and Minnesota just kind of ground that victory out. And that says a lot about them, and maybe like a learning experience for Colorado at that particular moment in time. But obviously Minnesota coming into this season, and they've gone out and got a guy like Thomas Vanek. I mean, how big of a signing is he for them?
Yeah, I think people kind of forget how good Thomas Vanek is because of, he played in Buffalo all those years, and then last year was the craziness of playing for Buffalo, then the Islanders and the Canadians. I think people kind of forget what good pure goal scorer he is, and I think for me, it's just adding to that arsenal. I mean, it's really, Chuck Fletcher has done a great job of just building from, getting Zach Parise and then, kind of getting Jason Pomerville and then filling it up with Nino Niederreiters and Charlie Coyle, and you add Thomas Vanek to it. And I really think we all knew this is where he wanted to be. He had great success at the University of Minnesota. His wife's from that area. And I didn't even mention Mikael Granlund. I think this guy, first round pick, is very talented. You match up a Vanek with a Mikael Granlund and possibly a Jason Pomerville, his old line mate in Buffalo. And I mean, the top 6, you're talking about a good top 6. I mean, that's not a bad one about a Parise, Coyle, Vanek, Granlund, and Pomerville. And even if Niederreiter sneaks himself into that top 6 instead of Coyle, it's a good place to start for Chuck Fletcher. And I'm really looking forward to Thomas Vanek, kind of getting out that negative energy that he had in Montreal, and the Canadian press just, ripping on him because Canadians had that magical run, but really without him doing anything. And I think for me, you're going to see at least 30 goals out of Thomas Vanek in Minnesota. Yeah,
and offense is definitely something that they need going into this season, anytime you're in this division. And I see Minnesota kind of in that 4th, 5th spot. Even if they're in 5th, I still think they'll grab a wild card and make the playoffs. How do you see it, Matt?
Yeah, I see them in that 5th spot, grabbing a wild card. I do see them flipping with the next team I'm sure we're going to talk about, and And I think for me it's the fifth spot, and really it's just the goaltending. I just don't know if I trust Darcy Kemper to stay healthy for a full season, and then you're asking Nick Backstrom to stay healthy, and then you're going to have Steve Goff to come off the waivers. It's not a good situation for Chuck Fletcher to be in and Mike Yeo to be in, and I think that's where I have them fifth, because the next team we're going to talk about does not have that same goalie issue.
No, without a doubt. And yes, we're moving on to what I call my second home, Dallas and the Dallas Stars, and they've been through, kind of rebuilding, retooling, whatever they want to call it these days. But I think what a job they've done trying to gradually put this team back to being a relevant team again.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Nill has really got to be applauded. I mean, this longtime assistant GM in Detroit, and had a lot to do with Detroit's success in the 90s, the 2000s. And, I think for me, he's done just a heck of a job. It's just really, you look at, and even the big moves, we see that we obviously see the big moves. We know about the Tyler Sagans. We know about, the Jason Spezza's, but even the side moves too have been really well for him. I mean, getting a guy like, Valerie Nikushin, 10th overall, and who's really going to be a stud in this league. Ales Hemsky, what a great signing he'll be. Cody Aiken, really kind of came into his own last year, in a trade with Washington. And even the Sean Horkoff's a nice fourth line guy, maybe a good guy to kind of get in there. For me, he's really done, really kind of built a lineup that has good balance. I love their third line. I think this is going to be the best third line in hockey this year, with Cody Aiken, Antoine Roussel, and Ryan Garvik. I mean, those guys are just so hard to play against. All of them have over 100 penalty minutes. All of them play you hard. All of them could score on you too, 30 to 40 points. I mean, just that alone just makes Dallas Stars such a force to play against. And then you look at the top six, adding a guy like, great chemistry as they had in Ottawa, Spezza, and also Hemsky added to Nikushin, and then, Nikushin and Cole. And then, of course, it all starts at the top with Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, and what chemistry those guys have, flipping the centers and the wings and whoever's playing what, as Jamie Benn still took a lot of face-offs last year, and played some center, and Tyler Seguin played some center, and whatever those guys play, it's just one of these best, teammate duos that we're seeing in the NHL right now, and really up on the rise.
No, without a doubt. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to a Stars game last season when I was over in Dallas. I tend to go over there every year, and my wife went along to a hockey game for the first time in her life, and I think she may have fell in love with Jamie Benn. But is Jamie still... Jamie's a star, but is he still a star that a lot of people don't know about? 'Cause he still seems to be a guy that is possibly underrated, dare we say?
Yeah, I would absolutely say this guy's a superstar in the league, and one of the most underrated superstars in the league. I think we kind of, we kind of forget what he's done, because, in Dallas it was, Brad Richards for a long time, then it was Mike Ribeiro, and we kind of forgot about Jamie Benn, and then his move to, from his left wing to center 2 years ago. I think we saw it in the Olympics. I think that was the biggest time we saw him, really, and with all those superstars on that team, and everyone just talked about his play and how, he's one of the best players in the league that no one talks about. And we saw it last year, because finally Dallas was back in the mix. Dallas was in the playoff race. Dallas made the playoffs, gave Anaheim a good run for it in the first round. And so hopefully this year, now after that playoff run and after that Olympics, we'll start to say Jamie Benn is one of the top 10 players in the NHL.
No, without a doubt. I think he's always a guy you think he's still on the rise and still can go much higher. And I agree with you about the Olympics. I think it really put that guy's name out there, but it still needs to go out there a lot more with the talent that guy has. And we talk about the top three. I mean, I've got Dallas finishing fourth, probably much like yourself, with Minnesota, say, just behind them. But what would Dallas need to do to break into that top three?
Yeah, I think for me, it goes back to their defense, just like Chicago, and you look at Alex Goligoski really finally took a step forward in his career. We knew he was a talented player, and we knew he was traded for James Neal and Matt Niskanen. So we know he's a very talented player. But, after him and Trevor Daley, I'm really not sold on the defense. I mean, Jordy Ben, Brandon Dillon, better, but not still up to there. Sergei Gonchar probably at the end of his career, as Jim Neal tried to get rid of him. Jamie, look at their young guys like Jamie Oleksiak and Patrick Nemeth and Kevin Constantine. I'm not really sold on their defense, and I think that's where I'm like, it's just hard for me to put them up. It's relying too much on Kari Lehtinen, who I think is one of the is one of these great goalies that kind of is kind of under the radar. And again, why I have them ahead of Minnesota is because of Kari Lehtinen, who finally has proven he could stay healthy. But it's just, you look at their defense and they don't have a Duncan Keith. They don't have a Brent Seabrook. They don't have an Alex Pietrangelo. They don't have a Jay Bouwmeester. And I think for me, that's where they fall short. And you look at these teams that are ahead of them, maybe Colorado. I mean, they're pretty similar in the same boat. They don't have those kind of guys, but that's what's going to separate them from getting to the elite level is definitely their defensive game. It's going to rely too much on their forwards to play defense, which, they can do that, but at the same time, you want to have defensemen that can also do that.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, I mean, the way we see it is that this is how the top five, we talked about it from last season, will probably be the top five again this season, and the two wild cards will be Dallas and Minnesota. So we move on to the team that finished sixth in the division last year, Nashville. I mean, what must they think? They're in this division. They've got these five teams ahead of them. I mean, they surely want to move out of this division because it's very tough for them, isn't it?
Yeah, gone are the days of the Nashville Predators winning this division. I think it's very hard for them. I think every game for them is going to be a struggle, especially offensively, and that's why they brought in Peter Laviolette, and they brought in a lot of these, Mike Ribeiro, Derek Royce. They brought in a lot of these offensive veterans that hopefully could shake things up. But you look at their record last year, 12-13-4 against the Central Division. Obviously, without Pekka Rinne, that's to be applauded. It's hard for me unless Philip Forsberg or Kali Yankarak, Craig Smith and Colin Wilson, some of these younger guys take the next step. It's hard for me to really kind of see them challenging any of their top four. And look, they made some okay moves. I mean, James Neal, we'll see what he does without Malkin. Ribeiro, we'll see what he does, maybe in a bounce back year for him. Olli Jokinen, solid player, but, not the days that he was, before, so I think for me, it definitely comes down to what Pekka Rinne has to give to his team, because we know they were definitely sorely missing him last season. And Peter Laviolette, what does he bring to the offense? Does he give some push to some of these guys that need it? Because we know all these guys are coming off career low offensive numbers.
Yeah, this is it. And you got the new coach coming in. How quickly do you think this team will adjust to the new system that Laviolette brings in?
Well, Peter Laviolette definitely brings in a really fast-paced, offensive-minded system, and I think wherever he's gone, players have picked it up well, because guess what? If you're an offensive player, what do you want to play? You want to play offense. You want to play forward. You don't want to go back and back check and stuff like that. So I think for me, it's one of those offensive systems that people pick up quickly. We saw with the Flyers their first year in Laviolette, their offensive numbers improved. We saw in Carolina their first year under Laviolette, they definitely improved, and even in the Islanders and the places he's been, we've seen some offensive improvement. So I think for me, it's not going to be the system that they won't be able to pick up. Is do they have the horses to do it? To me, other than maybe Philip Forsberg or Craig Smith, James Neal, we'll see without Malkin. I don't know if they have the horses to do it. I think they're going to depend too much on some of these players that are past their offensive primes, like Olli Jokinen, Derek Roy and Mike Ribeiro.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough season ahead. Obviously, they'll adjust to the new system hopefully quite quickly. They'll score more, but it's very tough being in this division. And I really at the moment can't make a case for putting them any higher than 6th and not being able to get into one of those playoff spots.
Yeah, it's hard to see them contending for a playoff spot this year. As much as Pekka Rinne brings a new attitude towards this team, especially as we know with Shea Weber and Seth Jones and Romy Josi back on the back line, it's hard to see this team making the playoffs in this division.
So we've got 6 teams out of the way, and now we'll go to the team that finished last in this division last year, and that was the Winnipeg Jets. And it's going to, much like Nashville, it's going to be a really tough season ahead for them. I mean, is this like a case of another team that's missing the old Southeast division?
Yeah, I think, what they wouldn't give right now to be back in the Southeast Division. Yeah, I think, it's really hard because you look at what Paul Maurice did under this team after, he took over. The team really kind of flourished. They really do have some good hockey players that you would want to build your team around, like the Jacob Troupas, the Andrew Ladds. They definitely have, some of those players that you're really kind of like, okay, they could be a good hockey team, but then being stuck in this division and looking at what they have offensively, what they have defensively, and then the question marks in goalie with Pavlik, it's hard to have any optimism about this team. I think they only won 9 games all year against division opponents last year, and that definitely is one of those things that you look back and say, okay, you're not even winning double-digit wins in your own division. How are you going to be able to make up those games in playing other divisions? It's going to be a hard year for them. We'll see what happens with Evander Kane. That's going to be probably one of the biggest storylines of the Winnipeg Jets, especially when it comes to trade deadline. What they could get for him, or if they're going to keep him and see where he is in his development. But another draft lottery position is not going to be is more likely for this team, and you know what? It's not a bad thing for this team, because if they win the Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel sweepstakes, that could turn their franchise around, because as we know, those are 2 talented players. So if you're going to pick a year to be down near the bottom, this is the year, and for Winnipeg Jets fans, at least that could be the hope for next season.
No, without a doubt. I mean, touching on something you just said there, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets won, I think it was like 28 games outside of the division last season, and you have to think, well, if you could just get a bit better inside your own division, then at least you could have made a run at a playoff spot, but unfortunately that wasn't to be. And then the other thing is around, obviously, Evander Kane, and you've just touched on it there. What percentage do you give that he might be traded come trade deadline?
Yeah, I think for me, it really all depends on how his season starts. I think he is way too talented for you to say, okay, we're just going to trade him. I think you need to see what he has left to give this organization. If he comes out and by March he has 30 or 40 goals, I think it's going to be hard to trade him, because he's proven that he can, get his career back and be ready to be a contributor to this organization. But if he's struggling like he was last year, or injury struggles or coaches struggles or stuff, then you're going to have to look at moving him and building your team around something different. So I think for me, it really all depends on how he performs, because there definitely is going to be a call for him to be a leader on this team and be a leader in this organization, and how he responds is really going to dictate his future with the organization. To me, he's just so talented. He's such a good player, and he's the kind of player I'd want on my team. So it's really going to be interesting to see what Kevin Cheveldayoff does, because this is going to be his defining moment in his GM as the Winnipeg Jets, is what he does with Evander Kane, because that guy sure can play hockey.
No, without a doubt. I mean, I for one, am so pleased that Winnipeg are back in the NHL. Their home fans have really seemed to get behind this team, and that's a loud arena there in Winnipeg.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been one of the great stories around the NHL, the return of Winnipeg, and how fans have brought it back, and their home record has been pretty decent the last couple of years, and it is really a great site, and it's exciting to see. But at this point, some of the fans are going to want to see some results, and they're going to have to start showing them in year 3 or 4, third or fourth year in Winnipeg.
No, without a doubt. I mean, unfortunately, I think we both agree that they're going to finish in the basement of this division again.
Yeah, they'll finish in the basement. I think for me, it's going to be hard for them to compete in this division. I'm really worried about Pavlik in goal. We saw it in Foles. Dustin Bufflin, where does he fit as a forward defenseman? Kind of interested to see that. But yeah, for me, it's the Eichel McDavid sweepstakes for them. And again, it's not a bad place, Winnipeg Jets fans, for you to be this year. If you were to pick a year that you wanted to be in last place, this would be it. And then hopefully they can use one of those players to turn the franchise around, because they sure do have the pieces. It's just finding that good combination.
No, without a doubt. If you can get a guy that's going to rebuild your franchise, and as you rightly say, this is the year to do it. And that brings to a close our Central Division preview. But just before I let you go, Matt, I understand you've had a birthday recently, so I just want to wish you a very belated happy birthday from myself and from all of our listeners.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. It's been, I'm always thankful that my birthday comes before hockey season officially starts, because I can go out and have fun and enjoy it and don't worry about the games on the TV, and can really enjoy it. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And looking forward to another year of covering hockey. And like we said before, it's going to be a great year. So we're looking forward to it.
No, without a doubt. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. We did talk during the NHL season last year, and certainly myself and the listeners would love to have you back on the podcast again to talk some NHL through the regular season.
Sure, anytime you guys need me. I always love talking hockey.
Excellent. Well, Matt, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.
Martinez gets the goal. The Los Angeles Kings have won the